This episode was sponsored by Property, the leading real estate agent for all real estate transactions with a comprehensive ecosystem. They combine highly trained experts with the latest technologies on an intelligent platform to provide clients, brokers, and service partners with risk-free, flexible, and simplified services. Learn more at property.com. That's property with an I.com.
Either we keep complaining about it or we try to do something about it. And then in 2019, we started Rivero.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating. And now, here's your host, Merle.
Today, I'm sitting here with Fatemeh and Thomas, co-founders of the startup Rivero, that is offering the first and only fraud recovery and dispute management SaaS solution. Thank you both so much for being here. I'm very excited to talk to you. And before we go into the startup and what it is that you do there, I would like to know a bit more about yourself. So I want to start with you, Fatemeh. I know you have also an interesting and diverse background. You did your undergrad in Tehran, then your master's in Malaysia, and your PhD in the Netherlands, and then you moved to Switzerland. Can you tell us a bit about your experience in these countries, why you decided also for these specific universities, and then how you ended up in Switzerland and what it all did to you?
Yeah, longest story. So I started my first university degree in Tehran. I did hardware engineering, and then I really wanted to go out of the country because, of course, you want to experience different cultures, and an obvious choice was Malaysia. Back then, it was quite a popular place for a lot of people to go there for as a tourist, but also universities. So, and I always wanted to experience living in an Asian country. So I went there, did my master's there. And then afterwards, I decided to move to Europe because my sister was living in Italy. So it just happened that I found this PhD position in the Netherlands that I instantly fell in love, and I read the application and then I applied for it. I got accepted. So I moved to the Netherlands, started my PhD, completed it in 2014. I started working then as a consultant in payment industry. So that was the story of how I ended up in Switzerland, because as part of being an advisor, I was working for many banks. Got to travel here to Switzerland for one of our clients, work here basically 2 years, traveling every week to Zurich, go back to the Netherlands. And at some point I thought, how about just moving here? But also one of the reasons was pretty much getting to know Thomas, working together, and then deciding to start Rivero. So that was one of the reasons for me to then make that decision to move to Switzerland, even though I didn't need that much convincing to move here, to be honest.
Do you think that having lived also in these different countries kind of shaped the way you work today or the way you lead today?
It's always hard if you are in it to talk about this, but I would say being comfortable with changes is one of the things that you have to learn, because the place where you call home changes every few years, and also uncertainties. So when you go to a new place, there are a lot of things to be discovered, try to experience the culture, try to fit in as well. And then, so I think definitely bring some personal experience. I don't know how I'm applying it in my work or how it's impacting me on a day-to-day basis, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think especially also as an entrepreneur, what you said, being able to adapt to change. I mean, I guess this is also something that happens in a day-to-day life.
Yeah.
When you have your own company and you need to change things all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Pivot. This didn't work. Now what do we do next? Yeah.
Exactly. And what about you, Thomas? Because I know your background also in academia, specifically information security and computer science. surely helped you also with the business that you do today. But can you tell us a bit more what happened prior to Rivero for you?
Sure, I'd love to. So, of course, my backstory is not as exciting as Fatemeh was. So basically I started in computer science. I studied in Stuttgart in Germany. And then after university, I came to Switzerland, which was almost kind of like by accident, I would say. Just happened to have one professor in university that I really liked that also got me into the space of information security, that said like, maybe you want to try applying in Switzerland because there's a huge demand for this type of jobs. And then I did, and kind of like the rest is almost history. So that was like 16 years ago. And ever since I live here in Zurich, but I did in fact then also spend most of my career in cybersecurity. So I had different roles like cybersecurity engineering, cybersecurity consulting. And then the way I actually got into the financial industry and into the payment industry was by becoming the chief information security officer of a large credit card issuer here in Switzerland. In fact, they have the headquarters here in Oerlikon as well. It's also pretty close. And so there I really got then into everything payments. At the beginning, I really thought like payments is like incredibly boring. You know, how hard can it be? Only until I found out it's actually extremely exciting. And also there's so much opportunity, I believe. And then what I think ultimately led then to the decision to start the company was, as Fatemeh mentioned, that we actually ran into each other working at that company. So I would be there working in cybersecurity, but involved in many projects. And Fatemeh was there as an external consultant, like she said, always flying in from the Netherlands. And then we got to work on many interesting projects. It was just around the time when all banks tried to launch the modern wallets, meaning Google Pay and Apple Pay, which was one of many areas where Fatemeh was an expert in. And then, we got talking, and eventually we realized that we kind of like share the same passion for this domain, but also the same frustration for a lot of things being done in a very complicated, old-fashioned way. And then, at some point we said like, we have two options. Either we keep complaining about it or we try to do something about it. And then in 2019, we started Rivero.
Was that also the reason why you both decided to go into payment operations? Or was because with your backgrounds, you could have done many different things, many different industries as well?
Yeah, certainly. I think I always had a little bit kind of like this dream of starting a company. And probably prior to joining that credit card company, I might have more dreamed about starting a cybersecurity startup. Now, in retrospect, I think I'm almost happy that I didn't do, because that's an extremely crowded space. But I think the reason why we ended up in payments and now really try to build products that make payment operations more efficient is because we kind of like had to deal with these issues ourselves working in the industry, right? So I think our story is very much the story of founders that kind of like, so to say, in their previous work life suffered from these problems and then decided, let's start a company so that others don't have the same struggles we had.
And in terms of products or solutions already out there, what did the landscape look like before founding Rivero?
So when we started Rivero, we had a lot of different ideas because, of course, we knew a lot of things that can be improved in the area of payments. But then the reason we ended up with the two products that we have as of today was the first product, we couldn't find any solutions on the market. So that was for us was a no-brainer that, well, it's important, critical, every bank has to deal with it, why there is no solution to fix it. And then the second one was for Amico, especially for fraud recovery, dispute management, because we could see that the e-commerce transactions, payments are gaining more and more popularity, and as a result, more fraud and dispute cases. But the way that banks typically handle this process is super inefficient. So if you look at it more from a cost saving, operational efficiency, it was one of those domains that we could see we can bring really good ROI for banks. And that was the reason we selected the second topic for Rivero.
So you just mentioned the two products. So the first one is Caio.
Yeah.
The second, Amico.
Amico, yeah.
First things first, what's the story behind these names?
So yeah, I mean, when you start a company, I mean, one of the first things you maybe think about is the name of the company, right?
Mhm.
And so we also had to find something that makes sense to us. So, and Rivero is similar or the same as the name for the product is actually a word out of the Esperanto language. And we have, well, in the end, you choose a name that maybe has a little bit of meaning, but ultimately, it needs to kind of like work well also from a marketing point of view. But actually what Rivero means translated is river.
Mhm.
And it was this idea of like things being, in motion, things being a stream of data. So that was a little bit the reason behind it. But ultimately, we just like Rivero as a name. And when it then came to also naming the products, it was pretty clear to us that we don't want to do one of these like very technical names that are not really a name, but more a description of your product, right? You could call it, I don't know, like smart dispute management or something like that. And we figured, no, our products should also have friendly names. And so we named them Caio and Amico, again, two words out of the Esperanto language. And Caio stands for platform. And Amico, one would probably almost be able to guess it, stands for friend. So like amigo in Spanish or Portuguese.
Okay. And for Amico, you already mentioned a little bit, digitizes dispute processes, saves a lot of time, makes it easier for the banks as well. What about Caio? Can you tell us a bit more what the product does and what the USP is behind it?
Yeah. So basically, any bank or financial institution that works with Visa or Mastercard or other payment networks to facilitate payment, whether it's like issuing cards or accepting card payments, they have to comply with rules and requirements of the payment networks. It's kind of a franchise model. Like if you want to open a McDonald's office, you need to, comply with some of the rules. And typically payment networks, they communicate those updates, requirements, whether technical but also commercials, on a weekly basis. And the way that most banks manage the process is just somebody consume those, like looking at them, which one really impacts us, and then sending it to the right department to make sure that they comply with that rules by the time that they have to. And then if you look at the process, it's not a streamline. It's just a bit of shoot and forget. Hopefully they will take care of it. If they don't, we hear from Visa and Mastercard that you are not compliant with this. And what we thought was like, if this is the core part of payment, to make sure everything works smoothly, you want to do it in a more streamlined way. That's the reason we built Caio. Because also working in the industry, we would receive those emails with an attachment of, oh, this is the new update. Is there something we need to do? And then we thought we have to do it in a better way. So basically the short overview of the product is help banks to stay updated and informed about all the information and changes and requirements that come from payment networks.
And earlier you said that at the time before you founded the company, you couldn't find a solution in the market that helped with that problem. What does your competition look like today?
It's still pretty much
the same.
The same. Fingers crossed it stays like that. I don't know. but also that comes with advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah.
Because if there's no solution in the market, that means you need to create market awareness about the product to bring this topic to the attention of the banks, especially on management level. Probably is the not the topic that they think about on a daily basis. So you need to create the awareness to the problem, to the pains of those people having to manage this process, and then presenting your solution. So, but on the other side, we don't yet have any competitors, which make it easier, tiny bit.
And you said also before that you work together, for example, with Visa and also with Mastercard because they're service providers. How do you Or can you maybe give also to the listeners a bit of tips or ideas on how you manage to set up these big partnerships? What are like do's and don'ts? How do you go about setting this thing up?
So we have been working in the industry, and when we started Rivero, we knew that one of the best partners for us are the payment networks, because we sell products that help their clients to do things more efficiently, better. And of course, Visa and Mastercard are always looking for partners that help their clients. So that's why we knew that it makes a lot of sense to partner with the networks. And when it comes to building those partnerships, especially with large companies, it takes a lot of time. You need to really spend time, effort, and resources to go through the process with them, because of course they check your product. They have a lot of questions about whether the products are relevant, providing added value. Do you have customers? How the customers receiving the benefits from you? But at the end of the process, if Visa and Mastercard vet your product and consider you as a partner, you kind of have a product market fit stamp, because they understand the space and they would say like, yes, this makes sense for our clients and we want to be a partner with you. So yeah, it's all about showing the value of your product to the partners that would consider promoting it to their clients.
And patience, I guess.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And in terms of the team setup, do you now have a dedicated team for sales or new partnerships that are coming up?
For partnership, we still do it on the founders level, but also like the sales team are working closely with our partners. At the moment, we are looking to hire more people in the sales domain, and maybe at some point also we consider partnership manage role. Yeah.
How many are you at the moment?
Right now, we are 36 people. We grew especially quite a bit in 2024. So that was a strong year of growth across the organization. So we grew quite a bit in, of course, the go-to-market team, like that Fatemeh is leading sales and marketing, but also in product and also quite a bit in operations, meaning support and customer success, because of course, the more customers you have, also the more you have the positive challenge in keeping them happy and engaged, and they also give very often very good feedback about the product and some ideas on the features. So you really have to have the resources to also take that in and process that and then bring it into the products, because I think that's also ultimately what gets the type of customers we work with really excited, because they very often work with very, very large service providers where they're either not heard at all, or if they have an idea for a feature, they might either have to pay a lot of money for it or they have to wait 2 years until it happens. And at Rivero, this feature that you just mentioned might just go live in the release a month or 2 or 3 later. And that is extremely exciting to them.
Buying Bitcoin has never been this easy. Thanks to the Relay app, you can buy Bitcoin with a bank transfer or a debit and credit card within a minute. The great thing about Relay is that you are the sole owner of the Bitcoin you buy, as you're always in control of your funds. You can also set up a savings plan to buy Bitcoin automatically every week or month, or buy it fee-free for up to 100 Swiss francs or euros each month. Take control of your future today by downloading the Relay app in your app store of choice and use the code SWISSPreneur to enjoy 10% less fees. That's SWISSPreneur in all caps. A quick disclaimer, Relay services are exclusively recommended for Swiss and Italian residents.
Can you guide us a bit through the whole growth in terms of personnel at Rivero? So it was the two of you at the beginning. Who joined first, and what was the decision making on this hiring process?
Yeah, so at the beginning, to be honest, we didn't even already make kind of like too many plans in terms of like what type of roles and people we would need along the way. So it was, you start by doing pretty much everything yourself. But I think it's good, because that's probably also the only way You build an understanding over all the different things that need to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And then, even though I have a background in computer science, it was clear it's not going to be me to actually do the software engineering myself, right? I neither would have had the time, but also since I was mostly doing cybersecurity things for the past years, it's not like I would have been a very fluent software engineer, so to say. So the first couple of hires were actually engineers. And I would even say a lot of the hires in the first year, probably, or 1.5 years, were basically only engineers. And then from there, you start also hiring additional people that are domain experts that really understand 2 areas of the products really well. And yeah, at some point, then you have to hire people for operations and people that help you manage the products. And of course, sales and marketing.
Mm.
But I would say for the first, also the type of products we build are not the type of products where you just build a little MVP and you launch it and you have a customer. It's not quite how it works. So I think it even took us around 1.5 years for the first product and maybe 2 years for the second product to bring it into the market. And of course, on that journey, what you mostly need is software engineering, right?
Yeah.
You don't even think already too much about go-to-market and sales.
You just said that 2024 was a year of growth. So according to the internet, that's when you raised 6.3 million in a Series A, and you didn't raise anything before that. Is that correct? It's the first time that you raised?
It's the first time we did a venture capital round.
Yeah.
We did already raise a bit of money in the first and the second year from angel investors.
Mm-hmm.
But we are quite proud that essentially we managed to bring the company to the level where we could then do a good Series A round based on basically just the money we brought in as founders.
Mm-hmm.
So also we put in quite some of our money and a handful of angel investors.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was, quite some years of pretty much bootstrapping, right?
Yeah.
Trying to just grow according to how our revenue grew. And then at some point, we also said now it would be the right moment to really accelerate things and, take this to the more international stage. And then luckily, we also managed by being extremely capital efficient to then reach the break-even point in late 2023. And then basically on the back of that, we then did the Series A round.
Right at the beginning, what were like the most cost-intensive roles / tasks where you had to put most money in? Do you remember that?
After the Series A or at the beginning?
At the beginning.
At the beginning? Well, at the beginning it was, and it still is, it's basically salaries.
Salary, yeah.
It's kind of like, it's basically salaries, and then everything else. I mean, of course, we also have expenses around technology and cloud costs. But if you compare that, I mean, all people that work for Rivero are experts in either the domain or in software engineering or in sales and marketing. And these are all kind of like highly qualified jobs. So by far, salaries are, it's by far the biggest cost. Yeah.
Did you pay yourself salaries as well at the beginning?
It's a great question.
Very good one.
So yeah, we always paid ourselves also a salary, but quite honestly, for quite some years, it's much better now, I can also say that. But for quite some years, it was almost more of a symbolic salary. Of course, you want to still pay yourself a salary to not be, completely out of kind of like the social security system and so on. But essentially, since we also put in quite some of our own money, it's kind of like pointless to then draw a large salary, right? Because you're only going to pay taxes twice if you do that. But so yeah, there were also quite some years where, in order to be really capital efficient, the founders, compared to the rest of the team, of course, you have to pay them proper salaries, even though, of course, as a startup, people also know that they will not get the same salary that, for example, Google or somebody like that pays. That's one of the things you probably have to be willing to do as founders as well.
Yeah, it's true. Something that I noticed, because we were talking about prices and everything, you don't actually state prices on your website. Is that, like, what is the reason behind that?
In our domain, enterprise SaaS, it's not really common to put price on the website. And the reason for that is that we don't offer it's not a B2C domain where There are like very specific packages and very specific needs, and then you have pricing for that. So with every client, we talk about their scopes, if there are some configuration specific to them, and also like the size of customers we have requires different level of service. So that's why it makes it hard to put really a standardized price on the website.
It's really interesting. When I talk to the two of you, I feel like you both have a very well thought through process in your head. And that's also how you built up the startup, and everything seems like it made sense. When you think back, what were things like really heavy learnings that you had or obstacles that you had to overcome where now in hindsight you think, we should have done that differently, or we really want people to know that they should look out for this?
Yeah, I can start, and then probably Fatemeh has
And
a
then
a long list of things to add to that. So, of course, there are many things that then actually turn out to be very different from how you imagined them. Not because you maybe couldn't imagine at all that those things are a challenge, but probably certainly not the degree to which they are a challenge. So I would say one of the things that is certainly hard is to build a really well-functioning team. And that already starts by the fact that, the resources we need are extremely scarce. Also, in the early days, we focused on only hiring here in Switzerland because we also wanted to build a company where kind of like the initial team, the core team, is located here. And we still do that for certain positions. We really hire them here in Zurich. Of course, by now also we have a more international team. We have a quite, I would say 40% of Rivero staff is not in Switzerland. They're fully remote in certain locations. But maybe that's a bit of a learning that I would say, but I would almost say it was a learning that in retrospect, it was the right decision. I would probably do it again this way, even though it's way more painful if you try, to build a strong on-site team as opposed to maybe trying to build it kind of like fully remote from the beginning, because I think you just build stronger bonds in the team and you can work way more productive. But hiring people has proven to be extremely hard across the band. And I think Fatemeh can say more to that in certain areas specifically. And then also, quite frankly, building kind of like the team and how they work together, right? At the end, it's humans. You have an incredibly international team, so, and that is great. I mean, it's also, I would say, really, really good for a team if you bring in all the different viewpoints. But that is something I probably would not have expected to be kind of like a topic that needs kind of like that much attention, right? I thought like, it's kind of like, of course you have to look after that, but this is going to happen. A lot of that is going to happen naturally, and you don't have to create for it that much. And I think that's a learning. And I would also say like people should not underestimating the time and effort it needs to build such a team. And the other one, but I think Fatemeh can speak better to that, is certainly how hard it then turned out to, win your initial customers and build the initial customer base.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, on hiring, I would say one of the lesson learned for me was listen to your gut feeling. Because sometimes you want to you want to be logical, you assess the situation. It can be hiring, but it can be a lot of other situation that you want to make a decision based on data that you have, but the data and your gut feeling completely different results. But I would say go with your gut feeling. And on the selling part too, like winning the first customers, of course we were fortunate to have the background in the payment industry, so we had existing network that we could start with going and talking about our products. We have really supportive customers in Switzerland, which I would say have been really instrumental to the company and building Rivero, supporting us. But of course, when you take it to the next level beyond your network, it does start getting hard. And the reason for that is like banks, they don't operate on the speed that we operate. So the decision-making processes are very long. There are many stakeholders involved. And as a no-name, a startup, suddenly going and trying to sell product for core processes, they are like, how how should we trust you? Why should we trust you? So you need that initial customer base to show that we are delivering service, we are a functioning company, and then have like capital to survive until you convince the next rounds of customers. But then it goes from there. One of the things we learned also as part of selling our products was how privacy and data security is important for banks. It's actually one of the reasons that maybe they might be sometimes hesitant to work with startups, because of course they can't have the risk of a startup messing up with something. But we were lucky when it comes to that, because from day one we designed our product in a way that are free from any customer identifying data or sensitive data that are considered critical for banks. And that was really helpful to sell the products, because then we reduce the risk on the bank side to make a decision to work with us. So I would say that was very helpful. But yeah, the challenge remains the same, because the speed that a small company works, whereas the speed of banks, especially the larger one, is just on a different scale.
This episode was brought to you by Google Cloud, a partner that needs no introduction. What you might not have heard of, though, is that Google offers a Google for Startups cloud program where they give you access to startup experts, technical training, business support, and cover your Google Cloud costs up to $200,000 for 2 years, or even $350,000 if you're an AI startup. Scale your startup faster and smarter with Google Cloud. Head over to goo.gle/Swisspreneur.
So now, the day we're recording, it's February 2025. What objective is the Rivero team looking forward to achieving next? Directly next.
So this year, basically.
Yeah.
So I would say for this year, we have pretty big ambitions in terms of how we want to grow the customer base and also grow the revenue as a result of that. Our focus has already been last year and already a bit the year before to take things more to a more international stage, right? So we already have customers now in 6 or 7 European countries. So we are already way beyond just our home market of Switzerland. But this year is especially about growing the business outside of Switzerland, because in Switzerland we also are quite well established, luckily. So almost all larger banks are already using our products. And also taking, I think, especially our sales and marketing team to the stage where we can then also serve a much larger market and develop more of those markets. Because in the other areas, I would say we have already made the most out of last year to kind of like build this foundation that we can become way more scalable. So I would say the goal of this year is really to fully transition from startup to scale up.
And what's the end goal?
What's the end goal? Well, that's I mean, I think one of the things that maybe is, special about Rivero or our products, I should say, is that even though we are a Swiss fintech, our products have nothing to do with Switzerland, right? So because a lot of times when fintechs build products, and of course that makes also sense in many industries, these are products that are connected to local regulations, for example. And ours are not. Our products are mostly driven by the rules and regulations of the international payment networks. And one big benefit we have out of that is that our products, as they stand, also work already in basically all those countries. So for us, it's from a product point of view, we can onboard a bank for example, Caio in New York or Singapore tomorrow. Nothing would keep us from that. And I think that's a big advantage. It's then mostly a question of your go-to-market team and, of course, your operation and customer success team. Because, of course, with a bigger time shift, you also have to be able to serve those customers well. But therefore, our ambition is also to ultimately really take it to the global stage. So I think our vision for the company is that, one day there is something like Rivero office in the Americas and probably an office somewhere in the Middle East or Asia to basically serve that market. And so, ultimately we want to take the company to a level that we cover pretty much all countries where also players like Mastercard and Visa are active.
So it is world power after all.
Yeah, it is after all. We really want to take it global, yes.
I love it. So before we finish this conversation, we always ask the guests if they have any resources or tools or gadgets that they really like and that they would like to share with the listeners.
In terms of day-to-day tools we use, ChatGPT. These days.
That's a good one.
Yeah, very helpful.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I think that there's a whole new kind of like catalog of tools like AI or like large language model powered tools. And of course, I think almost everyone uses them. I think it's important to kind of like be aware of what they're able to do and what they are not good at. But I think so many little things over the course of the day can be made way more efficient if you use some of them. But other than that, I think, for us, I think my most important tool is kind of like my MacBook, right? If you think about it, it's kind of like amazing that you can build a company with a bunch of people and all they really need if you're a software company is basically kind of like, a laptop and an internet connection, right? And a lot of coffee, obviously, right? So therefore, no, I wouldn't say like I have like a specific like gadget or tool.
Yeah, hard to say, really. A lot of things we use, of course, on a day-to-day basis. For me, like ChatGPT, the reason I mention is like really good to do quick research on a topic that maybe you're not very well familiar with. But like Thomas, like with large language model, you have to always be wary that the answer you might get might not make that much sense. Use it with some,
for
awareness about the
Take it with a grain of
limitations.
salt.
Yeah. We always finish our interviews with a round of rapid fire questions. So I'm just going to ask you a question. You say the first thing that comes to your mind. To you, Fatemeh, first. Iran, Malaysia, Netherlands, or Switzerland?
Switzerland all the way.
Thomas, if you weren't an entrepreneur nowadays, what would you be doing instead?
I would be working in the automotive industry.
Okay. And now both. How do you turn your business brain off once you get off work?
Watching movies, playing piano.
Nice.
Yeah, I would also say watching TV shows, spending a lot of time on YouTube, watching a lot of content from creators. And I'm passionate about everything technology. So I read a lot about stuff exactly like AI, car-related stuff. I'm a bit of a car nerd, so yeah.
Which TV shows currently up and running for you?
Oh, there's one big one that we even like both, right?
Yeah, Tulsa, currently. Yeah,
nice.
Watching that.
Yeah, and I think the last one where we also then talk a lot about it is Billions. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, Billions
is a really great show. Succession, can highly recommend Succession as a show.
Good one.
And of course, if you are like an entrepreneur in the tech space and you kind of like also like, laughing about yourself and kind of like what you do, then I can highly recommend Silicon Valley as a TV show, which pokes a lot of fun at like VC funded startups. Yeah. It's a great show.
I have watched that at least 3-4 times. Every time, like, so, makes sense.
So true.
So true.
Funny because it's true.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for your time and for talking to us. And I hope everything works out well for you. And I'm very happy to see you all over the world.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.